support with with finding employment. So if that's something you're interested in, we can get connected afterwards.
Okay. Mm.
Off mute. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Um, Welcome everyone to our monthly career skills workshop today. My name is Chris Stevens. I'm a career coach. I work with a nonprofit organization called Career Catchers here in Montgomery County, and we are partnered with the Ignite Hub to bring you these workshops today. So I'm glad you all could make it and decided to take some time out of your day to join us. Today's topic will be on career exploration, and we do want this to be interactive. So if you have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to share, please feel free to do so. You can sort of raise your hand either in person or use the raise hand function if you're on Zoom, or you can put your questions or comments in the chat, and we will address them. So, all right. So today's topic is career exploration. So hopefully the coming out of this workshop, whether you're sort of looking for your first job or maybe you're switching to a new career, hopefully there'll be some tips and things for everybody. But I want to start out by asking, so we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk sort of about what is career exploration, what kind of goes into that, and some of the basic, the three basic pillars, let's call them, of career exploration, right? Which is identifying your interests, how to sort of effectively make a career plan or a job search plan, and how to conduct the research you need so that you have the information to make informed decisions as you move throughout your career journey. So I'm just going to start out. So what is career exploration? If you're thinking about if you're looking for a new job or you're thinking about switching careers, what sorts of things go into that? What kind of information do you need to make your decision? I'm going to ask everybody who's watching right now. What kind of information do you need?
What your skills are?
Skills, yep. So skills would be one, right? A lot of times, what you're looking for is going to be aligned with the skills you have. Yep. What else?
The qualification you have. If you have a degree.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So like education, training, certifications, all of that. Yeah, absolutely. Um, any other factors that might go into that? Might go into sort of into your career exploration sort of decision making process.
Trying to figure out your strengths and weaknesses.
Strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, that kind of ties in with the skills a little bit. But yeah, absolutely. What are you going to be sort of comfortable doing? Yeah. So, yeah, basically in a nutshell, career exploration is the process that people can use to find a career that suits your personality, your interests, and your skills. So we did have a few of those factors mentioned. This process involves, considering various careers, learning more about each, and planning a suitable career path. So this kind of breaks down the facets of what we're going to talk today. And yes, all those answers were correct. Skills, education, strengths, weaknesses. All of those are important in considering, what career you're looking for. But there's a lot of other things that go into it as well, right? Interests, personality, and also, what your needs are. So we'll talk about each of those. So the first step in your career exploration sort of journey is to identify your interests. It may be based on your skills, it may not be, but regardless of education and experience and things like that, to sort of get a good sense of where your interests lie, you want to ask yourself questions like these, right? And these are pretty basic. What's something that you feel you could do every day and not get bored, right? Obviously, you want to ideally have a job where, where you feel like you're engaged every day. You can also sort of ask yourself, if money was no object, what's something that you would do for free, right? What's something that you're very passionate about, and that and that you want to pursue regardless of other factors. That's a good question to kind of ask yourself. Another one that I kind of like is, think about when you were 10 years old. What did you want to be? Sounds a little bit silly, right? But I think there is some truth to that. Chances are, obviously, you're not 10 anymore. Your interests and goals and things have changed since then. But at its core, the same kind of things that you were interested in at 10, some of that might transfer over. Maybe I wanted to be a fireman at 10 years old. Great. I don't know that I can, that I'm in a position to be a fireman right now. But, maybe the aspect of being a fireman that I enjoyed was, helping people, right? Maybe that's something I look for in a career. Or maybe it's more technical, right? I like the idea of riding on a big truck. So, there's plenty of careers that involve vehicles and maintenance and things like that. So even if it's not a direct sort of one-to-one correlation of what your childhood goals were, think about sort of what you were passionate about back then, and chances are, you still have some of that passion, in the current day, right? Even if it's not one-to-one. You mentioned strengths and weaknesses. You also want to kind of ask yourself, what are you good at? Just because that, you already have a sort of a built-in interest there. Maybe you have some skills or expertise already that that can transfer into a career path. That's not to say that you are restricted to only pursuing career paths that you are good at. It is just as valid, and here's where the next question comes in. It is just as valid to sort of look at new careers even if you don't have any experience. So another question you might ask yourself is, what's something you would like to learn more about? You may not necessarily have certifications or refined skills in a particular field, but maybe you think you'd be interested in it and would like to learn more about it. That is just as relevant a question to ask. Certainly for folks who are switching from one career field to another, all you need to do is figure out, okay, what am I interested in, or what sounds interesting to me that I might want to pursue. And finally, where do you see yourself in the future? And this is pretty broad, right? What are your, and we'll get into goal setting in a little bit, but basically, what are your long-term goals? And it's not just, where do you see yourself job-wise, but what kind of life do you want for yourself, right? And how can your choice in career sort of enable that future self and let you achieve those future goals. So it's not just what job you see yourself in the future, although that can be part of it, but also, where do you want to be? What kind of lifestyle do you want? Things like that are all important to consider. So if you're, again, either starting your career search or maybe trying to switch careers, all of these questions are ways to sort of walk yourself through identifying your relevant interests. Comments or questions on that? This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but this can be a good place to start. All right. So in addition to sort of interests and skills and things like that, we have our requirements too that go into our career exploration, right? It's a factor. We all have our own responsibilities and obligations, and all of these are different for all of us, right? So the requirements are things like location. If you live in Montgomery County, maybe you want to look for a job that's local, right? Maybe if you have children that go to school here, location is going to be important. You may not be able to pick up and move. In someone else's case, they may want to move, right? Out of the county, out of the state, who knows? But where location would be a requirement, right? Because that will help you determine what's sort of available to you. Schedule will be another requirement, right? Again, we all have different daily obligations and things like that. So you want to be able to find a job and ultimately a career that can kind of work within your schedule. That can be things like school or childcare. Any folks with things like regular medical appointments and things like that. You want to be able to make sure that you take all of those into consideration. When you're looking for a job, to make sure that it works for you. Salary is the big one, of course. A lot of times when we think about looking for a job, hey, what's the salary, right? That's kind of one of the big questions, along with what you're interested in. And of course, salary requirements vary from person to person. We all have our own obligations, but when we talk about looking ahead, right? Where do you want to be in the future? Salary does play a part in that because it enables you to do the things that you need to do. Work environment and accommodations are kind of similar, but as we're thinking about our sort of jobs and career path, you want to think, what kind of work environment do I want? It's similar to the what can you do every day, but do you want to be in an office setting all day? Do you want to be active all day, right? Are you good with fast-paced, intense, sort of working under pressure, those kind of roles? Or maybe you'd like something a little more slowly paced and following a sort of a more strict routine. Both of those are fine. And, everyone works differently. But thinking about that is important because, again, certain careers lend themselves more to certain types of work environments. Do you like working by yourself? Do you like working with a team? Things like that. So in addition to, again, the interests and skills and things like that, you do want to take a look at, what your requirements are too. And these requirements may not be set in stone. Salary certainly can be negotiable, just as an example. You may take a job that doesn't pay exactly what you want, but offers good benefits, for instance, or maybe has you'd be working for a reputable company where you can learn a lot of good skills or things like that. So, there is some flexibility here, of course, but that's up to you to sort of figure out for yourself, because, these requirements will determine what kind of career path you look for just as much as some of the skills and interests and things like that. Comments, questions? All right. So where do you start? A lot of times as a career coach, I work with folks who may not, have a clear idea of where they want to, go as a career. Some people do, right? They come in and say, hey, I want to work in healthcare. I want to work in IT. I've done the research. Some people don't, right? They're not really sure where to begin, and they're just kind of seeing what options are available. Both of those are fine. Fortunately, there are a number of tools you can use to to kind of help yourself get a starting point for what career you may want to pursue. This is a great example right here. So career assessments are a great way to start. Career assessments, take many forms, but usually they ask you some questions and at the end, basically give you a list of potential careers. This is an excellent resource right here, which I do want to show you. It's called the O-Net Interest Profiler. Let me see if I can shift over to my screen here. Can everyone see the web page? Let me see if I can do the share real quick.
And then go to window.
There we go. All right. So this is O-Net Online. This is a great resource, which I do want to talk about a little bit later. It's run by the U.S. Department of Labor, and it really is a wealth of information on all sorts of career fields. We will be coming back to this. But they have this career profiler, which even if you have a pretty good idea of what you want to do, as a career, I don't think it's a bad idea to take this. It's free, it's quick, and it can give you a good starting point. So there are 60 questions that you answer. And the point of a lot of these career assessments is not to think about, do I have the skills to do a certain type of job or the education, or, I'd like to be making this much money. It really is just about your interests, right? The goal is to kind of not really consider all the other factors. That comes later. There are no right or wrong answers for a lot of these career assessments. So for this interest profiler, it'll give you a set of tasks, things like building cabinets, developing medicine, writing a book, buying stocks, managing a store, all different kinds of things. And all you need to do is indicate whether you'd be really excited to do that, or not so much, or somewhere in the middle, right? You go through, you answer these questions, and at the end, it'll give you a list of potential career fields just based on your interests. Again, even if you have a pretty good idea of what you want to do, I think it's never a bad idea to kind of do some of these career assessments from time to time, because you never know. Your interests may change, or it may suggest other options for careers that you just haven't considered yet, and it might be worth exploring. So, I definitely recommend it, and I would say that's a very an easily accessible tool that people can use. Let me go back to my PowerPoint here. We're not going to spend too much time on this, but I do want to give an overview. So if you take that career profile assessment, this is basically what it's going to give you. It's going to assign you a score based on these 6 categories. So very briefly, this could be a whole workshop in and of itself. There was a individual, Dr. John Holland, who came up with a theory of work, right? And it's basically it's around career interests and career choice. Well, it helps determine sort of career choice and satisfaction based on individuals' personalities, right? It's not really a personality test, but it's similar. And this is what you would see if you take that O-Net interest profiler. So you'll get a score for each of these 6 categories. Realistic, that's the type of person who wants kind of hands-on type of work. They like sort of doing, as you can kind of see here. You could be investigative. That's sort of the problem solvers, the thinkers, right? Artistic, creators, any kind of creative endeavor would probably be considered artistic. Social, you like working with people, you like helping people. Enterprising, those are the entrepreneurs, the persuaders, as they're called here. And conventional, which is more so sort of organized and really kind of process driven. Now, when you get your profile result, you're going to be a mix of all of these, right? None of us are just one of these categories, and any job you can think of is going to be a combination of these different categories. But what this does is it gives you a way to sort of think about, again, your sort of personality and interests, and figure out, which of these categories do you lean more towards, and what kind of jobs will match those categories. So very brief overview. Don't need to get too much into it, but again, this can be a very helpful tool for getting a starting point to thinking about your career exploration. Questions on this? Comments?
Can you please give us a link so that we can try it?
Yes. So I should mention that you will be getting the PowerPoint presentation and the recording of this presentation afterwards. So
All
yep,
right.
you'll be
Thank
getting
you.
all the links and everything. Absolutely. All right. So you've sort of thought about your interests and your requirements and so on, and you might have a few different career fields that you want to explore. So how do you turn that idea, that idea into a goal, right? You do that by making a plan. There's a saying that I think it's an idea without a goal or without a plan is just a dream. So we want to turn that idea, hey, I want to be working in this field. We want to turn that from a dream into reality. And the only way to do that is to, effectively make a career exploration plan. So there's a few things that go into that. Goal setting, obviously, we'll talk a little bit more about that on our next slide. But you want to set yourself some short and long-term goals. Those can be whatever you like, but you always want to have sort of an end state, something that you're working towards, and some shorter-term goals that help you determine what steps you need to take. It's very easy to sort of get distracted or sort of slowed down if you have a long-term goal, but not really any sort of clear plan on how to get to that long-term goal, right? You really do need to know what steps can I take in the short term to get there. You want to be intentional about this plan, right? It's often helpful to write it out. That way it's physical. That way you can always refer back to it. Write things down, track your progress. And it also helps to create a schedule. And again, that can be whatever you want it to be, right? But a schedule. Here's what I'm doing, from now until I reach my long-term goal. It can be a daily schedule. It can be a weekly schedule. But the point is, no matter what you decide, you always want to make sure that you're doing something that progresses you towards towards your long-term goal. It is easier said than done. Life happens. Sometimes things come up. But as long as you're taking even just one step, on a regular basis towards your long-term goal, you're gonna get there. And having that schedule, having this all written out, really does help with that accountability aspect. I do encourage people to, once you have this schedule and this plan written out, to sort of check in with yourself and check in on your progress daily. Again, you may not be making huge steps every day. Obviously, oftentimes it happens a lot more slowly than that. But again, as long as you're moving forward just one step at a time every day, that'll keep you motivated. It'll keep you organized, and you're going to feel like you're that much closer. When doing this plan and doing these goals, you don't have to do it by yourself. Where possible, I encourage everyone to seek out feedback and support. And that can come from your friends, that can come from your families. It could come from a coworker or a manager, whoever, a career coach like myself, whoever it may be. It is often helpful to have that kind of support system. Again, to sort of keep you on track, to encourage you, and to provide that accountability, right? If you have someone asking you every week, hey, how's it going? I know you said you were going to start taking a class last week. Did you do that? Again, having someone else sort of supporting you and keeping you accountable can really, help make your plan effective and try to make sure you don't lose sight of what you're looking to do. So let's talk about goal setting here. Has anyone heard of SMART goals before? Okay, yeah, it's a very common tool. It's very easy to say, sort of set short-term and long-term goals for yourself. But even just setting those goals, things can still be a little vague, right? It may not give you a clear idea of what you're looking to do. We are here at the Ignite Hub, so I'm going to be using some IT examples. But let's say my goal is to get into, to become a cybersecurity specialist. And I'm coming from a different industry entirely, right? I have no IT background whatsoever. So, how do I get from no experience to cybersecurity specialist? Well, my long-term goal might be, become a cybersecurity specialist. Great. But what are the short-term goals? What are the steps I need to take to get there? Well, maybe I need an IT foundations course. Maybe I need to take an IT foundational concepts course to get familiar with the field. That can be my first step. Great, that's a short-term goal. But again, that's still pretty vague, right? It's very easy for me to say, well, I do want to get into that cybersecurity field, and to get there, I'm going to take this course, but I can do that tomorrow, right? Or if I just say taking an IT foundations course, well, what course, right? What sort of, where will that lead me? The goals ideally should be a little more descriptive, and that's where the SMART goals come in. So SMART is an acronym, SMART. The S is for specific, right? You want to make your goal as precise as possible. So to go back to my example, I don't just want to take any IT foundations course. I want to take the CompTIA IT Fundamentals Plus course, right? That'll give me a good foundation for subsequent CompTIA certifications, that will eventually lead me along the pathway to cybersecurity. So you want to make it specific, as specific as possible. Now your goals may change, obviously, and that's fine, but the more detail, the better starting out. The M is measurable. You want to make sure that you can always quantify and track your progress. Again, it's very easy to sort of just come up with some relatively vague goals that you're saying you're going to work towards, but you're not really organized about it, and that can be pretty demotivating, right? I've had this goal. I want to become a cybersecurity expert for a long time, and I just don't feel like I'm moving toward it. That makes me feel demotivated and discouraged. So if I have actual milestones and a way to track my progress, I can actually see in real time as I get closer to my goal. So you want your goals to be measurable. I'm looking at this IT Foundations Plus certification through CompTIA. It's got, let's say, 5 different modules. I can track my I can track my progress as I move through this certification course, right? And I know that once I can complete this certification course, I'll move on to the CompTIA A+ course, right? So I have some set milestones, some certifications I'm going to take as I move along my career path, right? So I have a way to show my progress. I want my goals to be attainable, right? Set goals that you feel like you can realistically achieve. Now, as a career coach, I encourage the people I work with to dream big, right? My coworker likes to say, "Dream so big that you scare yourself." And I believe that. Nothing wrong with setting very very sort of challenging goals, but you do want to be realistic, right, about what it'll take to achieve. So, if my goal is to become, president of the United States, that's great. That is a fine goal for me. Be cool if that happened, right? Is that attainable or realistic for me right now? In my current situation, probably not. A lot of stuff would have to change before I'm in a position to achieve that particular goal. So, you want to make sure you have sort of a realistic sense of, what it'll take to work towards your goals. Dream as big as you can, but, understand sort of the work that it'll take to get there. You always want to keep that in mind. The goals should be relevant, right? And this kind of goes back to interests and personality and things like that. But, the goals you set should genuinely matter to you. Ideally, these should be things that interest you and that you're passionate about. Because that's what's going to keep you going and keep you motivated as you move through this process. The goals should also sort of genuinely matter towards, should genuinely sort of help contribute to your long-term goal. If you find yourself, doing something and you feel like you're not really making any progress towards your long-term goal, it might be time to reassess what you're doing and think, okay, is this actually helping me, move toward my goal, or is it a distraction, right? So if you look at your goals that you're setting and they're relevant, that's good. That means you're not, you're using your time and your resources effectively, and you're not getting distracted on something that may ultimately not help you towards your goal. You also want your goals to be time-based, right? Short and long-term goals, they should all be on a timeline. Again, it's very easy to say, well, I want to be a cybersecurity expert. I understand there's some classes and some certifications I need to take, and I'll get to them eventually, right? I don't really have a timeline for it. I'll get to it when I get to it. How likely do you think it is that I'm actually going to, put a lot of effort in when I start thinking like that, right? Probably not as much. So you want to give yourself deadlines. You want to give yourself a timeline. It may be something that, again, you change, throughout your journey, but you should always have some kind of deadline in place. So, my short-term goal of doing that intro IT foundations course, all right, I think I can do it in a month. I'm giving myself a goal to achieve that in a month. I'm going to move on to the CompTIA A+ certification. That'll take me 3 months maybe to study for that exam. After that, I'll move on to the Security Plus. That'll take me a year. Whatever it is, you want to give yourself deadlines that you're working toward. It's another way to keep yourself accountable and to keep yourself on track. Comments or questions about the SMART goals? Does this make sense to everyone?
It does, actually. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, if you take away, this is one of the major takeaways that I do want everyone to remember from this presentation is the SMART goals. Because if you can apply this to your career exploration goals, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So we've figured out our interests and our requirements. We've set some goals for ourselves using the SMART framework. What else do you need for career exploration? Right now, it's time to start actually looking into the different career paths that you've chosen. And that's where research comes in, right? Conducting research is a big part of the career exploration process. Unfortunately, there are plenty of resources to help you do that. So, there's some key information that you need as you're looking into any particular industry or career field, right? Your first question should be, what is the career pathway, right? Are there opportunities for growth? How do I get from that entry level, IT position to that cybersecurity specialist, right? Is there a pathway that I can follow to get there? How long will it take? What will it require? Skills, training, that sort of thing. But how do I basically move forward? How do I make sure I'm in a career and not just a job, right? With a career, there's opportunity for advancement. So what does that look like for your career field? We did discuss salary, and it is important. We want to get a sense of what the earning potential is for the career field. It's going to vary from company to company or even location to location, but you can find there are resources out there where you can find some good information on earning potential, right? You want to get a sense of, okay, if I'm starting out in this new field, how much money am I making? As I continue to move up that career pathway, am I making more money? Is it going to be enough money for what I need to do? That is a key question. You also want to think about if your career field is growing, shrinking, or static. Something like IT or healthcare, there's always a need for that, generally speaking. So, those types of career fields are likely going to be growing. Other career fields may be shrinking, right? Or maybe, staying unchanged. There may be fewer jobs or not a lot of new job sort of openings that are going to be in these career fields. Now, does that mean that you shouldn't, enter a career field that's getting smaller or maybe remaining unchanged? Not necessarily, but it is something to think about, and it may be a little more competitive, so you just have to plan accordingly. So it is important to know kind of the trends within your career field. You want to know what sort of skills and knowledge are required, of course. I think someone mentioned that at the beginning. For any kind of career pathway, at some point, some advanced skills and knowledge are going to be required that you will probably need to learn. as you move further up the pathway. At the entry level, it may be pretty basic, right? But as you keep moving up, you may need to to do some training. Going back to that IT example, if I'm maybe I start my the process for trying to get into cybersecurity by starting out as a help desk specialist, right, or IT support. Starting out in an entry level IT support role, maybe I just need to be good at customer service, right? And have an idea of some of the basic sort of IT troubleshooting concepts, but a lot of that is interacting with people. So maybe getting into an entry level, that's all I need. But as I move up the career pathway, right, things are going to get a little more complicated. I'm going to need some more specialized knowledge and education to be able to take on the role of a cybersecurity expert, right? It's going to go beyond just the customer service and the IT foundation basics. So what skills do I need, and how can I get them? That's an important thing to realize. Do a lot of these higher level positions require college degrees, or are there specific certifications you should be pursuing? That's all part of your research process. You also want to have an idea of what kind of activities that you're going to be expected to perform, right? If I'm, again, trying to become a cybersecurity specialist, but, I don't really like sitting at a desk all day, well, there might be a bit of a contradiction there, right? I don't want to work in an office environment. Well, that's something that I may have to figure out. This goes back to the discussion about work environment and things like that. So, what activities are you going to be expected to perform on a daily basis, and are you comfortable and or interested in doing that, right, in the long term? You also want to get a sense of where the different career opportunities are located. We discussed location. So, again, if I'm looking for IT jobs or cybersecurity jobs, the DC area is probably not a bad place to look. There's plenty of, government contractors and large private companies and things like that, where there's, probably some good options there, versus something like, if I was a farmer or something like that, right? There's going to be fewer options in this area than the IT roles, right? So, figure out where a lot of the career opportunities for your chosen career path are located, and take that into consideration. Comments or questions on this? There's certainly other information that would be helpful to have, but these are kind of the key questions that you want to keep in mind. Is there any other information that people think might be relevant here? Let me put that out to the group, aside from what we've talked about already. All right. So I'm going to go back to my browser here. Let me get the new share going. So I'm going to go back to ONET here, and I'm going to give you an example of how to find some of this information. So I mentioned that ONET is a a great resource for market research, right, to identify career trends. And I recommend starting here. It is a great support. You can search pretty much any career, and it'll give you a lot of information. So again, we're at the Ignite Hub. I'm going to use some IT examples here. Let's say I'm looking into the potential to become a help desk specialist or IT support specialist. We'll go with this first option here, computer network support specialist. I think that's pretty close. You can see that some of the different job titles you might come across. So if I'm looking to learn more about this field, ONET will give me all of this information, right here. So, we mentioned the different job duties. These are our sample, or I should say our typical tasks that might be expected, that I would be expected to perform if I was working in this capacity, right? These are certainly not the only tasks, but it gives you a pretty good overview of what kind of work you might be doing. It'll give me a list of different skills here. If I want to get into this field, what are the technology? What is the software? What are the different platforms that professionals in this field are using, right? Things like Microsoft SQL, Power, Acrobat. I think Power BI was on here. Ruby, things like that, right? So what are some of these technologies and skills that I need to be familiar with to to give myself a shot at being successful in this career? Some of the different work activities again. Can I see myself working a lot with computers and doing a lot of problem solving? Doing a lot of sort of organization and detail-oriented work. If yes, great. If not, that's something to consider. It'll also tell you about sort of education and sort of specific knowledge you need. So we can see here that nationwide, about half of these types of jobs require a bachelor's degree, right? And the other half, may require just some college or a certification, right? Not necessarily require a degree. So that's good to know, right? To advance in this career field, it may pay to get a bachelor's degree at some point. We talked about sort of interests and sort of values and things like that. You can see that this kind of lines up with those Holland codes that we talked about earlier. So if you're someone who scored highly in the conventional, investigative, and realistic scores, this might be a good career path for you. And it links right to that profiler there. The other thing we can see is that earning potential, right? And we can break it down sort of, nationwide. So, across the whole country, the sort of average wage is about, 70,000 for, computer network specialists. Again, that's going to vary company to company, but it gives you an idea. If we were to look at Maryland specifically, that will, that'll give us a little bit of a different perspective, right? We can see that in Maryland, the average is a little bit higher, right? There may be sort of more opportunities around here or sort of, higher paid positions around here versus other locations. So this will give you an average of kind of what the earning potential is. We can even, get it down even further. I'm going to put, let's say, Rockville here. It'll give us sort of the DC area, right? So you really can go in and compare the different earning potential here, which can be very helpful. And actually, it gives you a breakdown based on sort of it gives you a pretty detailed location breakdown. It'll also tell you about job openings. We talked about whether a job field is growing or shrinking or staying the same. So actually this will tell you sort of what types of jobs might be. This is sort of a sample of different companies that are hiring and what kind of jobs they're hiring for. And actually, this is it right here. The projected job openings is what I was looking for. We can see that nationwide, for this computer network specialist job, there's going to be about 12,000 new openings between 2023 and 2033. We can break that down by state again. If we go to Maryland, we can see that it's growing a bit faster than the national average, right? 7% faster. So, by 2033, we're looking at potentially, 9,000 more. 2030, I guess. 9,000 more, employees in this field. So, again, this gives you an idea of what kind of opportunities are going to be, and you can see up here it has a bright outlook, right? This means that it's a growth industry. Obviously, there's a lot more information you can get from ONET, but I hope this was a pretty good overview. Comments or questions on this? And again, you'll get the link in the follow-up email. So this is a great place to start your career research. Another example I want to show you is the CompTIA website. For anyone who's unfamiliar, CompTIA is a certifying body. They offer IT professionals, right? They're not the only one, but they're one of the biggest and most common, I would say. And they have a career paths sort of roadmap tool that'll give you a lot of that same information that we're just looking at on ONET, but for some of these different IT career fields. So CompTIA has gone in and broken down the broad IT career pathway into a few different categories. We'll use cybersecurity specialist. That was my example earlier. You can see it gives the median national salary and the anticipated sort of annual job postings for nationwide. So as we can see here, cybersecurity looks like it's projected to have a lot of job growth, right? 250%. So that sounds good to me. Let's take a look, right? The opportunity is certainly there. I can go onto it and see what the average salary is, right? At the beginning, the beginner, intermediate, and advanced career levels. Again, it does vary, but this is a good average, right? As well as the different the number of job openings at each of these levels. So salary looks good to me. There are going to be plenty of job openings. What kind of knowledge and training do I need, right? Well, if we keep going down, you can see that CompTIA has a roadmap, right? A different certification pathway to going from beginning all the way through advanced. So if I want to look at cybersecurity, we mentioned the ITF and the A+ here. I'm also going to want Network Plus and Security Plus, right? As I continue my journey, I may want to do penetration testing or the cybersecurity auditing. Different sort of advanced certifications. This gives us that roadmap here. So for anyone who is interested in IT, I definitely recommend checking out the CompTIA website. A lot of the same information, I think organized very well. This is a great way to help you kind of set up your goals and figure out, what are those milestones, what are those skills, what are those certifications that you need to obtain, to get to your to achieve your career pathway in IT. And again, I'll send you the link for this. Comments or questions on this site? All right. The final sort of resource I want to point out, although there are several, although these are by no means the only one, is the Maryland Workforce Exchange. This is run by the Maryland Department of Labor. If you're not familiar with it, it is a job board. They have training opportunities around Maryland, and they have things like job market trends and things like that too. You can choose a career field, sort of like ONET, and it'll tell you, it'll give you some information on it. So we'll just real quick, we'll do computer and computer occupations, computer user support specialists, and it should give us some pretty detailed information, right? It kind of breaks down the wages by county, again, average wages, number of job openings, things like that. So, again, I recommend taking a look at a few of these different sources. They're all, have a lot of information that you can use to get the information that you need and conduct your research effectively. Let me get back to my PowerPoint here. So we went through ONET. We went through some of the CompTIA career paths. Again, a lot of great information. In addition to some of those sort of specific websites, things like Indeed and Glassdoor are also valuable for research as well. Glassdoor can give you salary estimates. It may not be exact, but it can give you a general idea. The other thing that Indeed and Glassdoor are good for are reviews, right? Maybe you've chosen a career path and are now looking at different companies within that career field, right? And as you start, narrowing it down even further and applying for some of these specific companies, you want to know if that's a place you want to work, right? So places like Indeed, Glassdoor, some of the Google reviews, that is also an excellent source of information to let you know if this is a place you want to work for. Now, you should take all of these with a grain of salt. A lot of people only post reviews when they are pretty dissatisfied. So, but it is another perspective, right? Shouldn't be the only information you use, but it can add to it. I recommend going on company websites themselves. This can be pretty helpful about, finding out about company culture and work environment and things like that. What sorts of projects and work these companies do. That'll help inform your career goals as well, right? If I work for this company, are they going to help, am I going to get the skills and things that I need to, to pursue my long-term goal, right? Talked about the Maryland Workforce Exchange, great resource. LinkedIn can also be good. That's a whole another workshop, but with LinkedIn, you can actually talk with professionals in that field and join groups and things like that, right? You can keep up to date on the different trends and get some information from people who are actually in that field. So, I recommend having a LinkedIn account. Even if you're not super active, it can still be a great way to get some information. All of these resources so far are sort of web-based and online, which is great. They're all free for the most part. But we don't just have to stick to online resources for research. Things like volunteering can be a great way to not only sort of potentially get experience in a specific job or career field, but it can be a great way to meet people. And in some cases, volunteering can even lead to a job. I can attest to that personally. So, if you're volunteering, maybe you can find a company that, does the kind of work you want to do, right? If you can, you can start volunteering there, that'll give you a sense of what's the work environment like, what are the day-to-day opportunities. And, it's not a commitment, right? You're a volunteer. You can leave or change the situation however you want. So I definitely recommend that. But I also recommend volunteering, even if it's not with a company or an organization that is directly related to your chosen career field, just because, volunteering is a great way to pick up new skills, and you never know who you're going to meet, right? Maybe you're volunteering over at Nourish Now, right? The food pantry, bagging food. Is that related to, my goal of pursuing cybersecurity? Not necessarily, but maybe the person who's also volunteering next to me is a professional in that field, right? And now I have a contact there. So you never know. So volunteering is always a good idea. Another strategy is informational interviews. Now, when we think of interviews, we often think about, you're actually applying for a job, right? And you're being assessed as to whether or not you can do the job. There's a lot of pressure, right? Informational interviews are not that, right? It's kind of designed to be the opposite. These are just for getting information. You're not necessarily trying to get an in with a company or get a job, although it could potentially lead to it, I suppose. But what you're really there for is information, right? Your goal is to meet with and talk with a professional in the field to get information, right? They can tell you about their experience and their journey and give you advice, ideally, to do the same thing. Informational interviews and things like job shadowing would be similar, right? Where you can try to follow someone around on the job. So, in addition to all the online resources for research, doing things like volunteering and actually meeting people in person or virtually to do informational interviews is another great resource that I highly recommend. You want to be developing those networking strategies as well. Comments or questions on some of the these websites or resources for research? Comments or questions around kind of doing some of the research for your career exploration? All right. Well, with that, it's about 1 o'clock. We'll start to wrap up here. My colleague Anthony is going to put the QR code, is going to put a link in the chat for the folks on Zoom.
Yes. 1 second.
If you could take just a minute to fill it out, it's just it gives us an honest feedback on this workshop. We use it to improve our offerings, and so please take a minute to fill that out. While he's doing that, I want to share one more, a little more information about the Ignite Hub. So as I mentioned, I'm a career coach, And my organization is partnered here with the Ignite Hub to bring you these workshops every month.
There's a link in the chat for you all.
Great. But I wanted to talk about some of the other resources that the Ignite Hub here at Montgomery College has. So in addition to our monthly career workshops, Ignite Hub has a fireside chat series where they bring in guest speakers in the IT field to talk about different sorts of topics. They have a similar Lunch and Learn series, right? Talking about the future of IT and the future of technology. So we've got sessions for April and May. Definitely recommend.
You can refresh that.
Oh.
There's new flags.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, hold on.
Scroll a little bit.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So here are some of the upcoming events. So there's a, if you're interested in project management and how AI might affect that, we've got an information session for you on the 25th. There were some coding boot camps, a lot of great other workshops and seminars and things like that. In addition to these, in addition to the workshops, the Ignite Hub also provides one-on-one career coaching through me. So for anyone who's interested in getting into the IT field, and if you live in Montgomery County, please feel free to reach out for one-on-one career coaching. So I can do things like help you update your resume, go through some of this career exploration process. I can help you prep for interviews, find options for training, all that all that kind of good stuff that goes into finding a job. So if you are interested, you can reach out on the website here. And what I'm going to do is actually put my direct email in the chat here as well. So please feel free to, if you're interested, please feel free to shoot me an email and we can set up a time to talk either virtually or in person. So if you're interested, please feel free to reach out. And I definitely recommend you check out the other offerings from the Ignite Hub as well. Other than that, I'd like to thank you all again for coming out today. And I do hope that we see you again for our May workshop, which will be on the 13th, and it'll be job search strategies. So we hope to see you there. And thank you all so much for taking some time out of your day and joining us this afternoon.
All right. Thank you, guys. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.